Parking in the Electric City is getting brighter. Did you know that downtown Scranton is getting a major parking upgrade? Our on-street pay stations are simple. Park in any designated spot. Enter your license plate number at the on-street pay station and pay with quarters or a card. You can even move your vehicle as often as needed during a single paid session. Want to pay on the go? Skip the pay station and download the Pango mobile app. Learn more at ScrantonPAParking.com.
Okay, we'll call this public caucus to order. Welcome everyone, thank you for coming. This public caucus is in regards to our quarterly update from NDC regarding the parking operations in the city. So I'd like to welcome Mr. TREVISANI and Mr. Sweet, and thank you for continuing to give us quarterly updates. And I'll throw the floor over to you, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Welcome. Thanks for having us. You know, we have a couple of new councilors here. Again, congratulations. These are the, as Councilor Gahn said, this is a quarterly meeting that we have started about 2 years ago, really to give the council an update on the construction project that's going on and a financial update on the parking system. I took the opportunity to put a few slides in here about NDC to give you a little bit of background on who we are, and a few slides on the transaction itself that took place, and give you a little background on the transaction so you have a flavor for what this is. I know that you're new to this. I'm Dave TREVISANI. I've been with the National Development Council for the better part of 23 years. I run their New Market Tax Credit Program and their Public-Private Partnership Division. And this project is within our portfolio. And Bud?
I'm Robert Bud Sweet. I'm a field director with the National Development Council. I've been with them for about 13 years, known them over 30. David's based in Utica, New York. I'm right up the pike in Binghamton. So we both can get here on a pretty regular basis.
Again, thanks again for having us. I'll walk through these. Please feel free to ask questions. Again, I might go a little longer than normal today, but if I get out of hand, just let me know, or cut me short, or feel free to ask questions. A little bit about NDC. NDC is a not-for-profit.
We'll ask if you could just speak a little bit more into the
Sure.
the microphone. Thank you.
And I'm good there. NDC is a not-for-profit 501c3 based in New York City. Our mission is to eliminate poverty, create economic development systems for municipalities, and lessen the burdens of government. We've been around for 50 years. Actually, we're celebrating our 50th anniversary here later this week in a project that we developed in partnership with New York City and a theater in Brooklyn called the King's Theater later this week. So we're really excited about that. NDC provides services to small and medium-sized cities around the country. Technical assistance, training, certifications. You can't do economic development these days using federal programs without having a presence in Washington. Most of the significant programs, low-income housing tax credits, new market tax credits, energy tax credits, are all delivered through the tax code these days. So you really need to stay close to what's going on in Washington. We also have financing and development programs, small business lending programs, affordable housing, and what this project is involved with is our Public-Private Partnership Division. NDC really has been developing public-private partnerships with our clients for the better part of 30 years, where a lot of our city partners don't have the capacity to develop projects. Many small cities don't often build parking garages, build city halls. We offer that development expertise, but we're also a not-profit with a group exemption letter with the IRS, meaning that we can issue tax-exempt bonds for our own projects or through a sponsor issuer, which is what we did here. So it really gives our partners the ability to tap into our development expertise and still use tax-exempt bonds for projects that are public in nature. So we don't view them as privatizations. So we've used this not for just parking garages, but for city halls, for university laboratory space, law office buildings, etc. When you're around for 50 years, the dots, there seem a lot of dots get sort of bundled together here. We've done a lot of business in the Pacific Northwest, a lot of business in the Northeast. Up at the top is just some of the numbers of some of the accomplishments we've done in some of our communities: affordable housing, new market tax credits, public-private partnerships, $2.5 billion in assets under management right now, small business loans, training, and technical assistance. You'll see the Scranton parking system down in the bottom right there. A little bit on this project. This is a Scranton's parking system. You have 5 garages, 6 if you include the Steamtown Mall. You can see the Steamtown Mall down at the bottom, the Linden parking garage up at the top, and then you have Electric City, Connell, Casey, and Medallion. Very strategically located within the downtown. We have really plenty of parking spaces in the downtown. Total 1,500 on-street spaces, 2,600 off-street spaces. The system remains at about 40% occupied at any one time, so we really have some room for growth. When this project was put in place in 2016, the goals at the time were really to unencumber the city from ongoing direct liability for the parking debt obligations. That was really one of the key aspects of this. Based on how we've structured this, Community Development Properties Scranton, Inc. was created. It entered into a concession lease both with the parking authority for the garages and with the city for the on-street system. It's a 45-year concession lease. Our goal was to upgrade the system, manage it professionally, make sure the capital needs were addressed, make sure the preventative maintenance was addressed, and we hired ABM Parking Systems, which is a public company, to come in and act as the parking manager for the system. They're under contract with us for 15 years. We're actually undergoing an almost $10 million restoration of the garages. Most of that's in the Linden garage. That was in the worst shape. And installing the new on-street system. Operate the system on a not-profit basis. What I mean by that is all the revenues, it's not a for-profit venture. We view parking systems in cities as public assets, and we think they need to remain public. So all the revenue that's generated from the system goes into operating the system, maintaining the system, and paying the debt obligations of the system as it was structured in 2016. So we sold bonds. The monies that are collected pay for operations, debt service, and any excess monies go through what's called a waterfall to allow for reserve accounts to be set aside for both operations and capital improvements as we need them as the system grows. And so far, that's really been actually working pretty well.
Yeah, and I don't want to interrupt you, but I want to make one point, and maybe you can expand upon this. I remember as part of the deal, at some point over the next 45 years, hopefully this operation becomes profitable. And when it does, and you have excess revenue coming in, is it correct that that money would come back to the city in the form of grants? So the city would actually see money coming in from grants?
That's correct. We have obligations under the bond documents to make sure our reserve accounts remain at a certain level. Anything over that will come back to the city. And we'll have to work that at a board level as to how that happens, but that's absolutely correct. This is not, again, this is operating on a not-profit basis with any excesses. Now, at what point will that happen? I don't know that I can give you an estimate, but it may be a few years from now, but the idea is to stabilize the system, operate on a non-profit basis, and keep the dollars generated in the system. That's the ultimate goal. And there's a rate structure built into the concession agreement. So when the deal was put together in 2016, that rate structure was set out for 45 years. So we pass a budget every year at the board level. That budget goes to the SPA board. Any rate structure changes, whether up or down from that schedule, higher or lower from that schedule, if it's for off-street garages, it has to come back to the parking authority. If it's for on-street, the on-street system, it has to come back to this body. So there really was some forethought given into what were the needs of the system, what the rates needed to be in order to be able to support the system, and those were built into the agreement up front. Now, I'm happy to say that we had the ability through the documents to go to $100 per month for a monthly parker. Today we're at $92 because we just didn't feel we needed to. And that's how we want to continue to operate. Our goal isn't to raise rates to generate more money. The goal is to keep rates affordable so that we can operate the system professionally and make sure we meet our obligations under the bond documents. And I think we've been able to try to do that so far so good. Now, we'll show you some numbers in a little bit here. But, you know, this year is going to be an important year because the new on-street system is in place for the first time. So I think we have some projections, and we put together, I think, what's a realistic budget, but between the rate increases and the new on-street system, I think we'll need a year to digest how we see that perform, and we're looking forward to that. So I think I mentioned this, the financial structure, long-term sublease concession agreement for the operation, maintenance, and capital repair of both the on-street and the off-street parking system, 2 separate agreements. Tax-exempt 501c3 bonds were issued in the amount of $39 million in 2016 to cover the cost of the concession payment to the city at the time, the garage reconstruction, the new on-street kiosk-based system. So the dollars were set aside at the time for upgrading of the system, and we're spending those dollars now. You see we're under construction, and the new on-street system has been fully installed. The corporate governments, this is important because Community Development Property Scranton, Inc. is an independent, private company, not-for-profit, 501c3. It has a 7-member board. We don't view this as a privatization. We view this as a public asset under a concession lease that ultimately will come back to the city at some point in time, either 45 years from now or at such time that the city wants to take it back and pay off the old bonds. I'm more than happy to talk to you about that when the time's right. But what's important is every one of our deals, NDC has been doing this for the better part of 30 years, and every one of our projects that we view as a public asset has a board that's made up of NDC and representatives of the local government. In this case, it's a 7-member board, 4 members from NDC and 3 members from the city. The reason the 4-3 is because these are our bonds, that's our obligation, CDPS's obligation, and it's our obligation to collect the revenues and pay the bonds. It's not a city obligation, so we have to remain the majority of that corporation. The 3 members of the city are a representative from City Council, a representative from the Mayor's office, and a representative from the City Comptroller, and it's by position. So it's the President of the Common Council, actually, or your designee, Comptroller, and Mayor, or their designee. We are in the process. We have a new budget year. The terms of the previous administration have expired. Jessica Escrow was the previous mayor's appointee. She carries over until we have our annual meeting, which we expect to have here in the next 4 weeks, but are looking to get the appointments of the individuals I mentioned, and we'll have an annual meeting and then formally appoint them. Going forward, we'll probably have quarterly meetings. The board doesn't vote on a lot. It votes on the budget, it votes on contracts, and anything significant like borrowing money, lending money, things like bankruptcy. We want to talk about that, but those kinds of things is what the board will vote on. So mostly they're update meetings. So that's really how this is structured. I know I went over that really quickly here, but I know for the 2 new council folks, I'm more than happy to spend time individually to go through this in more detail. The concession documents are 160 pages each. There's a lot of detail in there. So again, more than willing to spend as much time as you need to help get your arms around the details. But we view ourselves as a steward of a public asset in a partnership with the city and the parking authority to manage these assets professionally and keep them up for the long term for the benefit of the public here. That's really our goal. And so far so good. I hope that you'll agree.
And before we move on to some of the specifics, any questions regarding the governance, the composition of the Community Development Property Scranton from the 2 council persons?
First of all, so you acquired $39 million through a bond. How much of that has been spent already?
I don't know that I have a specific amount left in the construction account, but when we closed the transaction, I'm not going to get these numbers exactly right. About $30 million of that went over to the city immediately. That was the payment for the concession, the right to run the system through the concession. The balance of those dollars were set aside in construction accounts. So we're spending down the construction accounts now, building Linden. We're going to be done this summer. So the large chunk of that money has already been spent. It's being spent in conjunction with a $4 million grant that was received from the state of Pennsylvania. So about $2.8 million of that dollar were set aside for the electric city, which I'll talk about in a little bit here. It's a little bit different, still part of this structure. for a portion of the renovation of the Electric City garage. So most of that money is spent. Most of the Electric City money is still available. We're a little behind schedule there, but most of the money for the expenditures for the larger construction project are mostly spent, probably 80% into it now.
So most of the money's targeted for the construction.
Correct.
Or refurbing these places.
Yep.
But so then you said, in the event that there are reserves, so if there's capital improvements, so what I understand here is capital improvements are done through, based through revenue that comes in, or does it go in reserves first and then pulled out for capital
Well,
improvements?
the initial capital project was funded from the bond issue in 2016, so that's monies we're spending now.
Right.
Going forward, we'll take a portion of the revenues and we'll set them aside in the capital account for the future needs of the garages. Every few years, we're going to need to do a sealing, recoating, repair joints. So that's mostly what the work's going to be, because when we're done in June, these garages will be mostly new. I mean, Linden will look and feel like a new garage. And believe me, it was in bad shape. I'll show you some pictures here in a minute. But it'll look and feel like a new garage. It'll have 30 more years of useful life. So we'll do things like painting, joint repair, sealing, coating, and the like.
And I have one more question. This was a question that more than one or two citizens have asked me, and I don't have the answer, so that's why I'm asking it. In the past, before this system was in place, if you were ticketed, you had the opportunity within an hour to pay it at a reduced rate. Was that ever discussed in the decision-making process in the beginning, or no? I believe citizens still believe they can do that.
I'm aware that was the system that was in place prior. Today, the system is if you get a ticket, you have 10 days to pay. If you don't pay within 10 days, we send notice. If you don't pay within 10 days, it goes to the magistrate. That's the process today. We were actually we talked about this today, adding a fee. And I know that I can answer this without going to check the documents, but there's some issues with police power as to whether or not we can add a fee to that ticket. But that's the process we currently operate under.
Okay, thank you.
Questions?
I think my questions will be coming because they're more related to the improvements
Sure.
update. I'm curious about that, and if we can know,
Sure. And
how
what-
long
what-
they'll be needed, because I know in the past, like, I've wanted to go use a garage and it's been closed. So which
Right.
one is open? And I
Right.
can see other residents having that same issue, not finding which garage is open and
Sure.
which one is not under construction. So.
Sure. Feel free to interrupt. This is the capital improvement update. We started construction on October 18. The precast of the newer portion of Linden Garage is complete. Casey, Medallion, Connell are complete except for traffic line painting and coating. That'll be done in the spring or early summer. The post-tension, which is the older portion of Linden Garage, is about 90% complete. That was the most difficult part of this job. Required a lot of taking out old concrete, pouring new concrete, putting in new rebar, et cetera. The helix is what's left. The team that's on site now will finish up at the end of this month. They'll take a break. They'll come back in April. They'll finish the helix. Then they'll do the painting and finish up the painting, the coating, and then they'll be done. It'll be done this summer. So final completion will be in June. We may go over with that a little bit to finish up the painting and the coating if we needed to. This here is a picture of Linden Garage. Picture on the left is the helix, which is now a little bit smaller. It used to go all the way to the roof. Now it goes to the one level down. The top deck was just too hard to repair. Now, this gives you an idea of the extensive work that needs to be done. Very time intensive. They have to chip out the concrete. They have to fix the rebar, put new rebar in, and then form it, and then pour new concrete. This is done on every deck, on every level. So to your question about operations, it makes it very difficult to operate the garage at the same time you're doing this work. So having to close portions of the garage, change traffic patterns, our ability to communicate that is through signage and through the ABM website to let folks know. We've actually, we'll see financials in a minute here, we've actually never had to close the garage totally, but we've had to close entrances of the garage at different times. We have a red light, green light system to change the traffic flow. We try to do that with signage. We try to do that with emails to our monthly parkers. Not ideal, but it's the best way that we have in order to be able to communicate that. We are working now with Scranton tomorrow. They're planning to put what do they call it, a link, not a link to their website, but a page on their website, which is parking related. So, I mean, most folks go to ABM's website to pay a ticket, not necessarily to get information. So we wanted to be able to connect better to the community. Scranton tomorrow offers that opportunity. They've been really great to work with. So we could post these announcements there, whether we're closing a garage, opening a garage, there's construction activity. Normally we do it through ABM's website and through emails to our, our monthly customers. So we think that's going to hopefully work better going forward. So these are the things we're trying to do to communicate. But again, very technical work. Here's the helix. You can see it's down one level. These bars have been taken down now since. You can still use that level, but it's two-way traffic instead of one-way traffic is what it will be. So that's the portion of the garage that will be done in the spring, and that'll be the last piece of the reconstruction.
What is the security like in the garages?
The security? Mm-hmm. It's something that we want to upgrade. Right now we have security, a security contract, which we have a full-time maintenance person on staff. ABM does. They're regularly in the garages doing rounds. We have security personnel who work overnight to provide security in the late hours after the office closes. And when we're finished with the project, we'll have security cameras installed. Right now, Linden has very few, if any, that work. They'll be installed in key locations in the garages, and it'll go to a central panel in ABM's offices, and it'll be linked to the police station. So I think it's going to be very much enhanced once we're all done.
Would those be just at the entrance and exit, or on every floor?
Every floor. They'll be in the stairwells. I couldn't give you a specific, but yeah. The camera project alone is $160,000. So it's a pretty substantial upgrade to what's there now.
Okay.
Again, just some examples of the kind of work that's being done. Electric City Garage. Electric City Garage was handled a little bit differently. When we were putting the project together, the city decided the parking authority decided to sell the Electric City Garage to the mall, to the owner of the mall. They then leased it back as part of that transaction to the parking authority, who then leased it to us to operate, so that we operated with all the rest of the garages. The difference was that the mall owner, as the owner of the garage, was responsible for reconstruction of the garage and maintenance of the garage. Our role through ABM was to was to operate the garage. The renovation split was to be 60-40. That was pre-agreed. We set some money aside from the financing in an account specifically dedicated to this. We've been spending that money, albeit slowly. There's been an elevator upgrade. There's been LED lighting. There's been some demolition on the top deck. The project was supposed to be completed by September of last year. It obviously is not yet complete. We currently, CDPS has taken control of the top two decks of that and did some emergency repairs to make it safe. If you go there now, you can't access the top two decks. We felt it was unsafe. We invoked what's called the self-help provision in the lease so that we can go out and secure that site. We're now working with the owner to get an extension of the completion date, and that's in the process as we speak. So we're hopeful we'll have that agreement in place soon. We'll hope that the owner will be back under construction soon, and they'll be finished within the course of a year. What we've done to date operationally is we moved all the cars from the old side of the garage, which is in terrible shape, to the new side of the garage, which is in pretty decent shape. And we've improved and moved the water through building a diverter system off of the exit, because the only way to get out of that garage is through the old part. So we have all the cars in the new part, and all the cars will exit through the old part, and what we've done is really made it safe.
So I have a question on that. So according to the agreement, Steamtown 300 LLC was responsible for 45% of the immediate capital expenditure costs, which was $2.25 million.
Correct.
Do you know offhand how much of that money has been spent by Steamtown 300?
If I remember from the last pay application, it's in close to $1 million. That represents elevator repairs, LED lighting, some electrical upgrades, and some of the demolition of the concrete on the upper floors.
Then they were also responsible for 100% of ongoing capital expenditure costs and maintenance costs. Have they kept their end of the bargain in terms of that?
Well, considering the shape that the garage is in, it's hard to keep a garage maintained in that shape. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and we're working with them to hope to get it done as soon as we can.
And then the parking authority contributed $2.85 million toward immediate capital expenditure costs to rehab the garage. Do you know roughly how much of money is left in that account?
There should be about $2.5 million. I think total spent to date on the garage is about $1 million, and that's the 60-40 split. So I think it's 600 from that account and 400 from the owner.
Yeah. Now, I've expressed this to you previously. I have concern that I have not heard in 4 years a good reason as to why this is taking so long. Have you heard an explanation from Steamtown 300 on what exactly is the holdup?
I think it's just, not specifically, no. I think that we've been trying to work together on providing oversight to the job and have regular work take place. It's been start and stop. So I don't know that I have a good reason, Counselor.
Okay. Thank you.
So that's Electric City. Also, the parking system includes a new kiosk space, or what we call multi-space pay stations, which I think you've seen them around town. We've tried to work very closely with Scranton Tomorrow, tried to work very closely with the merchants. Scranton Tomorrow has an ambassador that's downtown. The enforcement officers that work for ABM are trying to do some education. When we put in place or announced the system, we brought on Posture Interactive to help us put in place a marketing program. So we had some billboards, some brochures. We put together a video that was on the ABM website, which now is going to be on the Scranton Tomorrow website. We're working with Scranton Tomorrow to have a meeting with the merchants. I mean, we're finding that folks, change is hard. I mean, we recognize it's going to take a while for folks to get used to this new system. It is a change, and we're hopeful that the outreach and the education we've done will get folks there sooner rather than later. For example, using Pingo, how that works, how the merchants can help their customers use Pingo, how a merchant, we actually have a program that most folks don't know that allows merchants to pay for their customers' parking at a discount. So those are the kind of things we want to try to get the word out to the public so that we can make it easier. We don't want to be just giving tickets. We want to make it a system that works for folks, and it's easy to use because tickets are expensive.
One of the questions that has come up here in the past and has been, if you pull in a spot and you put money into the system, and then you come out early and you still have money left over, can you then take that almost like a credit and move to another spot? And not
As long as you're in the same zone, correct.
And what do you mean by the same?
Yeah.
To what?
Go ahead, bud.
There's a 2-hour zone limit and a 10-hour zone limit. So
Oh,
if you
okay,
park
so-
within, right, if you originally paid and parked in the 2-hour zone, you'll stay in a 2-hour zone. But you can't move from a lower price zone, 10-hour zone to 2-hour zone.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
And that's been a real, we think that's a real advantage, so folks don't have to go out and plug the meter. And using Pingo, if you have Pingo on your phone, I recognize not everybody has a phone, but if you do, I mean, we've seen the Pingo usage go way up just in the past month since we have the system in. And it's really easy to use, and we hope to get that word out to the merchants.
And what if if the system is malfunctioning and say, I've run into this too, where it's having issues authorizing your card, or it's frozen, and you already have your car there, so you move it to another spot, because how's someone going to know that there's a problem with the system and that you haven't paid because of that?
That's a good question, but I don't know, operationally, I'd have to ask that one to ABM, but I do know that, I believe that there's a phone number on there that you can call that allows you to make a complaint, and obviously if you get a ticket in a non-working area, you wouldn't have to pay that ticket, but I'd have to get with ABM to understand exactly the procedure and communicate that, but I'm happy to get back to you.
Okay.
Yeah. But nobody's expected to pay a ticket for a system that's not working. Here's our budget. On-street kiosk system, $1,804,000. Happy to say we're on budget with that. Did the garage construction, again, general construction. Most of that work's been done in Linden. The elevator work, electric, mechanical, plumbing, fire protection, engineering, design. Happy to say we're currently on budget. We actually were able to take some of this money and make ready some of the commercial space that's vacant in the garages, namely in the Medallion, which is the old, what's it called, bud? The old bar that was in the Medallion garage, Coliseum. No, the Coliseum. Yep. We've cleaned that space out. It really was in bad shape, mold, et cetera, but now that's clean, safe, and ready to be renovated. And we will soon be spending some dollars in the condo space to get that ready to rent. So we think that space will be attractive. Some financial highlights. This is 2019 performance. We're at year end, of course, and we have a 2020 budget. Revenue better than budget by $200,000, a little better. Expenses are worse than budget, sorry, that should say, by $100,000. And net operating income better than budget by $105,000. So we were able to meet our obligations under the documents and had $105,000 in excess cash flow, again, which will flow through the waterfall and be captured in the reserve accounts according to the documents. This is a little bit, you have this in your package, it's a little hard to see here, but this is how the detail of the summary I just presented with the 2019 budget. So this breaks out the different revenue categories and the expense categories. And the different categories are monthly parking. You'll see that we were better than budget there. Main reason we were better than budget there is because we expected, we had a large user that left downtown just recently, the Wright Center. We thought they were going to leave. They didn't leave, so we didn't budget for them last year. They ended up staying, so our monthly numbers are better than we expected, which is good news. Unfortunately, we don't have them for 2020, so our 2020 numbers aren't going to be as good. Transient revenue, the reason for that negative variance is Linden Garage has lost a lot of traffic because of the construction. It's about $25,000 a month that we get in transient revenue. Under construction, it's hard to keep that up. People are just going to go other places. Validations are, I mentioned earlier, merchants can buy discounted passes to give out parking to their customers if they choose to.
How do you make merchants aware of the discounted rates? Are you working together with Scranton Tomorrow to talk to businesses to do that? Or
how we getting the word out?
Yes.
You said? I think just through really word of mouth. A lot of the merchants have been in the system for a really long time. I don't think that we promote it heavily, but I think it's something that folks should take advantage of.
There's plenty of new businesses coming in and out of downtown that I think it would be worth doing some outreach so people are aware of that monthly discount.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. We can do that through Scranton Tomorrow. That's probably our best way to get it out, get the word out.
Okay, thanks.
Direct miscellaneous income, those are our tenants in our buildings, our commercial tenants. Meter revenue, the councilors who have been here before, that has been always the bane of our financial performance here is the meters have always, we haven't met budget yet once. I think it's just the meters were old, the systems didn't work, they froze up, we couldn't get them repaired, they were out of service. So we're hopeful that that will stabilize going forward with the new system in place. And again, expenses, I think, are lumped together there. We do have some labor, and then our general expenses, of course, which are very specific. And then here's our rate structure for 2020. This was approved by the board and approved by the Parking Authority for the on-street, or the off-street, because that $92 is less than the $100 that we were allowed to go to in the concession agreement. So we had to get approval from both the board and the Parking Authority board. Just a couple things to point out there. We do have programs. We have a new Parker monthly rate. For a new Parker, your rate is $65 for 3 months. We have a Scranton resident monthly parking program. If you're a resident and you live downtown, you get a 20% discount. The voucher program, is what we just discussed, that we didn't actually change that program when we raised the rates. We wanted to keep that affordable and to keep it at the same level, so we did not raise that voucher program. We're doing an all-day parking program in some of the outlying areas to try to get folks into our system that are parking, outside and walking in because either they can't afford it or it just doesn't work for them. So just trying to bring folks into the system that aren't now in the system. So this will be the rate structure for 2020. And I know you have a meeting coming up, and this is the 2020 budget. You'll notice that revenue is larger because of the rate increase and the efficiencies we expect with the new system, and expenses are also up. But the main reason expenses are going up is what we're finding is technology is great, but it's also very expensive. Maintenance charges for the kiosk, maintenance charges for the equipment, internet connection charges, credit card fees, all those things that we didn't have before, we'll now have with the new systems in place. And so we do expect to have a solid year where we meet coverage, but again, expenses are up as well as revenue. So again, this will be a good year for us to get an idea of how the system's going to perform longer term because of, one, the rate increases, and two, the new on-street system.
One more question, I think. I was looking to see if you had perhaps a percentage of utilization of the garages, perhaps in comparison to metered parking, and if we have goals for where we would like to be at with that utilization.
We certainly have room. We're about 40% occupied overall. Some garages are more utilized than others. For example, Connell Garage is almost 100% occupied, but it's right next door to a residential building. So most of those folks are residential parkers from Connell. Casey and Medallion are across the street from each other. The Medallion garage is mostly used by hotel parkers. The Casey garage is probably only 20% occupied because it just there isn't a utilization there. Linden is very well used. I think that we'll see a lot more usage there once we get it reconstructed. I think you have a great system. Once the garages are all new, they're located in an area of downtown that's really not far from most places that people will visit. What we're seeing is a growth area is residential population. We're seeing residential buildings being developed. We think those are new opportunities, which is why we offered the discount to try to get them into our system right away. So
what
on the residential program, that was something that came out of the discussions at the Scranton Tomorrow Economic Development Committee meeting that we attend regularly. I'm usually the rep there, and there was a call to have a program that could work in combination with the ongoing development in downtown. We are aware of the LRTA that council passed last year to return some of the vacant parcels or underutilized parcels to higher and better use. And we knew that if people would be, and developers would be more encouraged to do so if they knew there was accessible, affordable, and safe parking options for them. So, and for our part, we restricted the residential program to garages that were underutilized. So it's kind of a benefit to both parties.
Okay. And I was just wondering, the revenue that you have here in the budget for 2020, is there a percentage of utilization that's based off of, like where you want to be?
Really, it was based off of last year.
Okay.
2020 was a little different because we have the new on-street system in. So we did build some efficiencies in We expect to be able to enforce better with the new system. We expect the revenue to go up because of the efficiencies. It's easier, vehicles now riding around instead of people walking around. So we think there won't be turnover. So if someone parked in a spot and then they paid with their license plate, when they leave, the next person starts over. Where before, if you pulled in and you put in $5, the next person, you only spent $2, the next person would come in and take your spot for free. So we think those are it's going to increase our revenue, hopefully. But we have plenty of spots.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions?
I have a quick question. So as I'm looking here, it says rate structure is built into concession. Increases, I guess, will be incremental, but what does it look like? You have the current rate 90, the new rate 92. What do we expect long-term? Like, when do we expect a rate increase or not?
Well, it really
Based
depends
on what?
on the budget. We felt 92 was the right, we were able to go to 100. We didn't feel we needed to go to 100. 92 was what we thought worked, and for our budget for this year. Again, I think this year we'll have to see how the on-street system performs, because that's really where the revenue is to support the off-street, because they're just more expensive to manage. So we don't expect great increases over the next couple years, but remember, this was the rate structure. I don't have it in front of me, but it does propose increases beyond $100 over the next 5 years. So will we get there? Really depends on how well we control expenses and how well the on-street revenue system does. Our goal isn't to just raise rates. It's consistent with the schedule. Our goal is to raise rates only where we have to cover our obligations.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, well, thank you, gentlemen. Our meeting is going to start in a few minutes, but I thank you for coming in. Thank you for the quarterly update, and appreciate all the work that you've done, and I appreciate how transparent you've been with council and with the city administration. The one thing I do want to say to kind of wrap things up here is that one of the things that we've talked about previously is I know that you work with Scranton tomorrow in terms of an education process with the new system. I do think, though, that the city administration moving forward needs to be an even more aggressive partner in terms of, as we spoke, using social media to get out alerts, events, changes, things like that. So I know you're getting together soon with the administration, and I'm hopeful that will work out well.
Great. We're looking forward to those conversations. We don't want to be just viewed as the folks who issue tickets and the bad guys. The
Right.
downtown is needed for economic development, or parking is needed for economic development downtown. We'd love to be viewed in a more positive light, make it easy, make it safe. As long as we do our job and do it right, keep them maintained, keep them safe, we hope that folks will use them, and that'll lead to investment downtown.
Great. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Have a nice night. And we'll start our regular meeting in 2 minutes. I'm just gonna...
Parking in the Electric City is getting brighter. Did you know that downtown Scranton is getting a major parking upgrade? Our on-street pay stations are simple. Park in any designated spot. Enter your license plate number at the on-street pay station and pay with quarters or a card. You can even move your vehicle as often as needed during a single paid session. Want to pay on the go? Skip the pay station and download the Pango mobile app. Learn more at ScrantonPAParking.com.